So here. Salamta ጤና ይስጥልኝ. Ethiopian fraternal greetings. Salamta, peaceful greetings. ጤና ይስጥልኝ, which is the Israelites of Ethiopia, Royal Amharic way of saying shalom, right? Shalom. ጤና, health. ይስጥልኝ, may he, even he who be who ye be, the Almighty, give health to the I and I on I and I behalf. Yes, I. So here in this vlog here, who was the first Rastafari? Now some are circulating a meme out there, and there's a book actually in the film. Gonna check that out as well, and have enough love for Gangangaru Marah, aka Leonard Percival Howell. If you go into archives of audios and videos and even writings, you'll find that's the LOJS.org. LOJS for the Lion of Judah Society of His Imperial Majesty. But here, who was the first Rastafari? So let's just ask the question and answer, and then show some exhibits and some proofs and some other related material, evidence, and exhibits. Edamawi Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie I, or another way of interpreting, translating the name, the Hashem. Haile Selassie I, Haile Selassie first, was the first Rastafari. So the first Rastafari, and this is with all due honorableness, when I say respect or respect, but our first respect is for our namesake, Ras Tafari Edamawi Haile Selassie. It is Edamawi Haile Selassie I, Haile Selassie first, the first Haile Selassie, the first power and might of the Trinity. He who be who he be, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Baruch Hashem, is the first Ras Tafari, or in the Amharic enunciation, RAS TAFARI. RAS TAFARI, born Tafari, that man child, according to the teaching of the Ethiopian Hebrews and here in the royal order, according to Revelation chapter 12, that man child that was born there. This man was born there, Psalm 87, verse 4, with Ethiopia, Im Kush, Zeh Yulad Sham. From the Hebrew, this man was born there, with Ethiopia. So that man child, son of man, that man child, Teferi, Mekonen. That man child, that son of man was born where? He was born there. Now the prophecy and the prophetic word that we have in Yohanes Rai, according to the Royal Amharic, the book of Revelation, Yohanes Rai, right? The Chazon Yohanan, in the Hebrew, the Chazon, the vision of Yohanan, Johannes, John's Rai. Hail up to Stephen Marley on his one of the album covers, Revelations. He actually has that there in the Royal Amharic, the word Rai, vision. Father, vision, the people, loose live, they are perishing, they go astray. So here, another thing we have to state for the record is that there was a lot of diverse doctrine, diverse interpretations of what Rastafari have meant. Now, for the patriarchs and the matriarchs of Rastafari, those who have gone before, they did not have these means that we have to study to shoot I and I self-approved to Haile him, to the power, to the source, to the true good, to the true God. So ones were stating things like Rastafari had created. You probably find that in a lot of, we call these works like grandfathered in. A lot of these works are grandfathered in. When we say grandfather, the elders before us, right, telling us enough truth, but on some areas, such as the Royal Amharic language, they had to rely on it's like an informant or someone to inform them, maybe Ethiopian or someone, or sometimes books, going through books, and like the whole Sata Masagana. We say Sata Masagana and hail up to the Abyssinians because we was able to get through to them. I sister wife, was able to get through to them, and they actually did a new tune to that whole Sata Masagana. Now that's been grandfathered in too. That means when it came forward, the ones who brought it forward were sincere in what they proclaimed, right? And what they brought forward, like Sata Masagana, right? But Sata Masagana does not mean give thanks in the royal heart. But how would we know? We were, any crumb, so-called, any crumb that like fell off the master's table, we were grabbing at any crumb, at crumbs, like Crumb TV grabbing at crumbs, but any crumb, right? Until we got the children's bread. Now here is the children's bread, right? The scripture, the word, well studied, and hopefully, Jah willing, well said, right? So it's I, LOJS Society, the Lion of Judah Society, Rastafari Sabbatical, remember the Ethiopian World Net and the ILNet and the other platforms, Rastafari Nights and the other platforms that we had out there, some that we still have out there, but the main one is LOJS.org. LOJS.org. Lion of Judah, Yehuda Moan Besa, Bamrinya, Lion of Judah Society.org. It was I, right? The Rastafari Chabarim, I. And I on the tip of the spear, Ras Yadinos, Ras Yadin, Iodonis Tafari, that first declared to you and explained and gave you the hints, not even the hints, but the evidence. We hinted it before we started to really get in on it with a video to really prove that Rastafari does not mean and did not mean head creator. See, one very bad thing among some ones and ones in the community that we don't really give, due honorableness, right, to ones and ones for the good that they have done or that they are doing, right? And that's also part of that curse because of disobedience. We, right, so-called black and brown peoples in the Caribbean and here in the Americas, the once lost now found black and brown sheeple of the Bait, Yisrael of the Beta, Israel. Also, we got some other videos, vlogs, to touch on subject matters that many ones been asking these questions. Many times we have answered them in private or direct reasonments, but we also need to put out some video and other documentation, audios, audibles, and more of the evidence so that ones can have the answer and then can look over these things for themselves, right? But it's I that really have helped to purify the oil and the apothecary in the Rastafari community concerning the name. Still, as ones and ones will say, we heard an audio of Haile Selassie, a.k.a. Robert Nesta Marley, better known as Bar Marley, where he said Rastafari mean head creator. Because this is what their informants, Ethiopians or otherwise, had informed them of, right? Or misinformed them of. Yes, Ras does mean head, also prince is a title. So literally, Ras means head, but it refers within the Davidic Solomonic order of the Israelites of Ethiopia, of that Shem, kingdom and government, authority and power of the Hashem. More correctly, it is prince, a prince, like a head, and it was like a head man, a prince. And also we have it Hebraically as a Rosh, so forth and so on. Teferi, the one to be reverenced, the one to be respected, the one to be feared. One translation could be feared. We bring out the more scriptural, the higher sense, to be reverenced or to be respected. But the basic peshat, the plain level, one to be feared. Ras, the head, the prince to be respected, the prince to be reverenced. Remember, Robbeinu, I Rabbi, the rabbis, Ha'adon, Yeshua, Ha'notzri, a.k.a. Geta, Jesus Christos, Jesus Christ, Isaiah, the King of Kings Christ. Even he says this, right? He brings this out as well in one of the parables where he says, well, next time he'll send, first there was a parable, Mashal, Misale, that Yeshua Hanotsri, Justice of Nazareth, he gave concerning a man who went to a far country and he left it in the hands of like husbandmen, ones to husbandmen like agricultural terms. They're going to take care of the farmland and agriculture and so forth and so on. So he left to, go about some other business. And then after a while, the husbandmen, like the clergy, the church folks and the clergy and everything like that, they thought that all this land, this wealth was theirs. So they began to, act like they were caretakers, but then later on they started to act like they are owners. It's theirs. So the man in the far country started to send different servants to go check on his property. Right? Just like we talk about in the church, even in the old Judaic, you could say synagogue, and in the old temple, first century, the same thing that the Moshiach was explaining. And they killed different ones, to say like how they killed the prophets that came to them. Right? They stoned and abused the prophets. And then he said, perhaps they would reverence my son. They would do what? They would reverence my son. So they sent his son, and they did the same words to the son. Right? And then Yeshua asks the question, Robeinu, I, Rabbi, because the true called chosen faithful, our Rabbi Yeshua. Right? Rabboni, right? Adonenu, Mosheinu, our Messiah. What does he say in the first advent? He asks them, what will the master of this vineyard, the master of the house, what will he do? Right? He's going to return and he's going to punish them miserably for what they have done to his son. So this also now can be interpreted in the sense of what occurred in 70 AD, right? Concerning Jerusalem and Judea, right? And the Romans, Vespasian, Tito, the destruction and the fleeing into parts of Africa, East Africa, and the eastern seaboard of Africa into other parts of Africa. Some were killed, of course, in the siege. Others went into slavery in Europe and in other places, right? And that was the destruction of that kingdom. And as the Messiah says, the kingdom will be given over to a nation bringing forth the fruits thereof. So we just pointed to some of the Ethiopia connections there, both from the scripture and prophecy, and also history, archaeology, and all of that as well, in order. So the first Rastafari, of course, is Kedemawi Haile Selassie. That's the plain truth of the matter. Haile Selassie I, or Kedemawi Haile Selassie the first, he is the first Rastafari. He is the first Rastafari. He's the first of the Rastafari. So here, there's been a lot of memes, different memes that have been, going around, basically saying, well, either this one or that one is the first Rasta. But the main one that they usually attribute to being, the first Rasta is Leonard Percival Howell, a.k.a. Gangangaru Mara. The author of The Promise Key. Now, ones know in the earlier years of the ministry, we focus on the Promise Key a whole lot, and of all the ones, that are attributed in the early days of the Rastafari movement, or in the beginning of the Rastafari movement, it is this particular one that is very, very instrumental. So we will not do anything to cast any shade on the good light and the true light that Leonard Percival Howell has brought forward to Rastafari, right? And what he has done for I and I. I mean, even the fact that he was one of the early and first, and also one of the most, one of the more beneficial members of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. Right, also needs to be noted, right? We have some exhibits here that kind of prove that as well, that Leonard Percival Howell, whom many attribute to being the first Rasta, often Rasta. Now, Rasta is a derivative term. It's a derivative term, It has a meaning, I think, maybe in India, in Sanskrit or some of the languages over there, but properly, it does not have a meaning in Amharic. Properly in Amharic, it really has no meaning. Now, this film here by Helen Lee. This particular film here. Now, if you notice, they have is that Lenin? They actually have Lenin, which is one of the false gods that the careless Ethiopians had fallen for during the post-godless creeping coup against His Divine Majesty Kadamawi Haile Selassie. Right? So when that creeping coup went on and they got rid of the true first power and might of the Trinity, they brought in a counterfeit Trinity, right? Marx, Engels, and Lenin. Right? So we have to be aware of these things. They are things that are part of the world, flesh, and the satanic seclorum, right? And this kind of links with another subject matter. Why are there so many diverse doctrines, right, among nowadays Rastafarians? Again, why are there so many diverse doctrines amongst nowadays Rastafarians, right? But as far as Leonard Percival Howell, his importance to the Rastafari movement, as well as his importance to the We the Black People of the World movement and the Ethiopian World Federation, incorporated in 1937, not in 1996, right? Because there's a lot of scams, fraudulent behavior, a lot of bandulu kind of stuff that's confusing and really slowing down the real works of We the Black Peoples of the world, to address that as well. But here, this particular film, we haven't seen it, so we're not commenting on the film, but we're just looking around for what's out there. So we put in the search, the first Rasta. And this is one of the things that came up. And then we saw Lenin's picture there. We had to say, what the expletive deleted is this all about? I mean, how in the world are you going to put Lenin? Now, we saw some other, excuse me, just stay hydrated. Right here, let's go to some other exhibits, okay? Leonard Percival Howell, Gangan Guru Mara, as he is known and called, right? And this one right here, this particular, is called Leonard Howell and the Rise of Rastafarianism. Now, you know, we bun that ism thing, right? Rastafarianism. Remember being on Lawrence Davis podcast, What You Know About God and His Chosen People, and our brother from the ISUPK, the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, Captain Azania, in the early part of our, podcast, our Saturday after the Sabbath kind of reasonings, he was out every time he mentioned Rastafarianism, and I don't agree with Rastafarianism. And I said, bro, you saying I'm playing semantics, but you're playing semantics. We say it's Rastafari. See, some of the babies, Ja babies. We're doing this for the Ja babies, so little babies, come in, Ja babies, because Ja babies have to get the children's bread instead of getting these crumbs, right? These crumbs that are falling or being swept off the table, right? Because the crumbs and all that's for the dogs. You know what I mean? The crumbs, the crumbs are for the dogs, right? The crumbs are for the dogs, but the children must get a full and a complete meal. Yeah. So just briefly on the Rastafarianism, not to go off on a tangent on this right here, because some say that sometimes, we do ramble and admit it and give thanks, bro, just for that kind of heads up, right? They say open reproof is better than secret love, so we give thanks, so we can just stick to the point right here. But the point on the Rastafarianism, when they add ism, they're trying to put it within the world, Babylon, the systemic thing. See, when they say Rastafari, they know they're referring to the man, Ras Tafari, as well as to the movement of that man, of that son of man, of that man child. Speaking of I and I, Rastafari. You see, and that means that the man and the movement is one. When they start to add these isms, Rastafarian, like the elders used to say to I and I, when they say Rastafarian, and what, and who, right? And what, and who, right? In other words, what and who, and, like you're saying and, Well, and what and who? You know, who is being added? You know, it's like adding something onto like Rastafari and what and who, right? So they add the and to it, right? And you'll notice it seems like almost purposely, like if a Buddhist called himself a Buddhist, and I say Buddhist isms, it's like, you know, it's like a sneak or overt diss of what the people clearly are identifying themselves as. You know what I'm saying? And we have identified, and the elders before I have identified ourselves as who we are, but they know that they can't deal with the truth as it is. So what they do is they'll add on to something or twist it up or turn it around another way. And when the people are clearly saying, well, this is who we are, we're Rastafari, right? Rastafari of the Rastafari, Kedamawi Haile Selassie or Haile Selassie first. He is the first Rastafari. He is Rastafari. So you might see it written sometime as Ras, right? Ras being separated by a space before Tafari. Ras, the title, Tafari, the man child. And when referring to us as the people, as Jah people, as Rastafari. Now one will say, well, I met a Rastafarian. You know, it's interesting that people of different nationalities, so forth and so on, not every nationality is like, you could say Canadian, American, you know, but other nationalities, some nationalities where you can, like people say, well, you don't say Israelian. You know, you don't say Israelian, you say Israeli, because in Hebrew, Yisraeli, that's how I would say Yisraeli, to say an Israelite, but in the bringing it over into the English, one will say Israeli. They don't say Israelian. No, you don't say that. Now, if you start to go around trying to say that, they're going to hit you. They're going to bang on you. They're going to hit you. They're going to say, no. Right? And then they might even throw the anti-Semitic. You know, they might get into that anti-Semitic, they might get into that anti-Semitic rhetoric, you know, as well. And it might be, it might be justified, because if they're telling you that this is who we are, and, you want to then call them something else, because if you can get them to agree with that, you know, you've already manipulated, you changed the goalposts. Right, the goalposts. But anyway, this particular, I wonder whether the elder brother Leonard Percival Howell, I wonder whether his daughter, right, I wonder whether she has been in any way kind of involved in that process. You know, the daughter, you know, Catherine Howell. I think her name is Catherine, right? Yeah, Catherine Howell. You know, whether she was involved in that as well, because this is often what they do. So they put out this video, so from someone. We're not saying that the video is skewed or whatever, we haven't seen it, but since it's by someone named Helena Lee, if that's how it's pronounced, right? Leonard Howell and the Rise of Rastafarianism, right? In order to kind of shape the story, the narrative. Right? There's even others who say that Rastafari, and you might have heard this, you might have heard this before. They say that Rastafari come from Jamaica. But wait, doesn't the man come from Ethiopia? Doesn't the word of prophecy say as lightning come from the east to the west? So it came from the east, Ethiopia, East Africa, and then the light shone out here in the west, in the Americas and the Caribbean, right? And it took light even in the Isle of Jamaica, right? Isn't that how at least the more faithful history, right, basically testifies to the Rastafari movement? But then ones will say, no, it comes from Jamaica. And then they try to make it like Jamaica owns it. And then who really owns Jamaica is the British, right? And then it becomes, you get what's happening. This is how they manipulate, the intellect, the mind, right? And if you don't stand on your square, right? Stand in your square, so it's Rastafari. Not that everyone who uses it, they use it in the academic and the intellectual system of things. But that's not the only scholarship. There's a lot of ones out here talking about sources and what's your source, and the historians and the latter-day Western Gentile whitewashed scholars, what they say, and they ignore our own scholarship. We have our own scholarship, right? And we should recognize, right? We should recognize our own scholarship, right? It's very important that we recognize our own scholarship, right? And scholarship doesn't just, get like co-signed in the same Gentile Anglo-American university, the same maybe slightly reformed, self-reformed. Remember when Christ talked about, like a person try to self-reform them and they become like worse a child, worse for it. It's in let me see if I can just bring this up, because nowadays scholars and everything, and a lot of ones that try to battle with the Hebrews or Israelites, or even I and I as Rastafari Israelites, they'll try to battle with I, and then they'll go to a lot of this the popular scholarship or intellectuals, and then act like, well, they're always correct with what they're saying when they are even disagreeing with former scholarship. So we need to do our own scholarship. The part that we're seeking to focus on right here is this part, just to share this one right here, right? To share this one right here. It's in chapter 12, where it says, when the unclean spirit is gone out of a man. Because now we think that, well, a lot of these white scholars now, they're not racist. They're not on the same thing as their ancestors were. Well, when the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places seeking rest and findeth none. Then he saith, I will return into my house from whence I came out. And when he is come, he findeth it swept, empty, swept and garnished. Then goeth he and taketh with himself 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell therein. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be also to this wicked, ratchet generation. Now, when Robenu was saying those words, it's right after he said the only sign that he gives, right, is the sign of Jonah, right? And then he mentions about the Queen of Sheba, the Queen of the South, right? And this is all historical, just to point out that we have all this as historical, right, evidence. So the link with Ethiopia and the Queen of Sheba and the Queen of the South also needs to be, duly noted. So we're saying that even these new scholars today might seem as though they are different than the old scholars, but what we find that they're trying to do, they're seeing that we have gotten into the scholarship. Many of us have gotten into scholarship. We see these old works and writings that we never had access to, right? Basically testified to what the Holy Spirit and the Spirit of truth has revealed to us. When we point it out, then we have some pseudo-black unconscious folks saying, pseudo-black conscious folks, really unconscious folks saying that, oh, well, that's not the consensus of the scholars today. The scholarship today doesn't agree with that, and rah, 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 and rare. And you have to stop for a moment and saying, wasn't all of this like newly? A lot of that is like some newly stuff. They say that, oh, well, there's not the archaeology, right? The archaeology. You expect something to be laying in the sand in a part of the world where people have gone through for thousands of years, and you expect something to be laying on the surface of the sand right now. So just because the archaeologist questions whether something is there and whether they can find a material thing of it, to deny a living history of living people who have a real connection, like the Israelites of Ethiopia, like we could say the monarchy and that 3,600 year connection right there, we have to dismiss that. So this is a little point right there on some of the pseudo scholarship that pose as scholarship or historians, and one say, well, where's your historical proof or evidence? I mean, after a while, they might try to change the picture of this beautiful brother right here and make him seem like something else. And we've seen this already happen. And because they have the media and the means, they can do this, right? And it's hard for us to respond. And now with social media, when we do respond, like what just happened to us on our podcast on Blog Talk Radio, right, for the 25th of August, right, the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated 1937 Constitution Day, right, our whole program was blocked out, you know, the Prince of the Air, the Prince of the Power of the Airwaves. It's like Daniel's prophecy, chapter 9, verse 26 and 27. Get into that a little bit more. So this is some of what we found on the first Rasta, right? So it seems to be that this is perhaps a white scholar, it seems like it's German, Ein Film von, or Scandinavian, or one of those Northern European cultures that did something. And you know, a lot of our people are still under, you know, the spell of Jim Crowism and white so-called supremacy and everything like that. So if a white person says it, you know, or European, or somebody who's part of some economic, well, it's actually economic, but educational institution, because it's all about the economy, how they're going to run this system. So now they recognize, oh, these bywords have woken up. So therefore, because they have woken up, we need to change up the narrative. Now, this one right here too, you can see that it has His Majesty's picture. Notice what His Majesty's picture is. His Majesty's picture is over here in the corner. Let's go right over here. You see over here? Here's His Majesty's picture over here in the corner, in the right-hand corner, next to Marcus Messiah Garvey, right? And that can be somewhat problematic, you know, as we're growing in knowledge, right? Then on the next side, you have Gandhi. You get what I'm saying? And next side, they have Lenin. You see how they're trying to mix it up, right? Mix up. This is what the Bible means when it says, thou shalt have no other gods, right? Elohim Acharim before me, right? It's clear that the Rastafari and even Lenin perceive how in the Promised Key, and also in the in the portion of Black Supremacy that was written by Valentin Petersburg, somewhat before that, and some say there's a connection right there. Leave that to our own scholars to bring out their research and their finds on that, you know. But even in his own writing, he points out it's about His Imperial Majesty, about Rastafari, plain and simply, right? Right, so this is also another one on the Premier Rasta. I think this is the French version. So you can see how they're circulating these things around. So what has happened is that ones have done a documentary, and they say that Leonard Percival Howell was the first Rasta, yet in all of his writings, at least in the Promised Key, I don't think you can show me one time in the Promised Key where Leonard Percival Howell even calls himself or us Rasta. You see how disingenuous they are with their so-called pseudo-scholarship? Yeah, because they're part of some university or they get big backing from the Babylonian system, right? Even though they're under self-reformation. That's why I read to y'all in Matthew chapter 12, verse 43 to verse 45. The worthlessness of self-reformation. Right? Because the Babylon system, white supremacy, you know, now there's some goody two-shoes, right, that act like they're going to learn our knowledge and put it out there, and they start to drop in things like Gandhi or Lenin. You know, they started dropping these other things, and like I showed you over here, let's just go back to this once again. Look where they have His Majesty. Look where they have His Majesty, off on the side somewhere, underneath somebody's arm or something like that, the right-hand side picture. What kind of crap is that? And then they say the first Rasta, abbreviating the two-part name RAS TAFARI. It's Tafari and it's Ras. Now in Jamaica, among the Benjamin, you know, the Benjamites, you know, Jama and the Benjamites, you know, under that British, being a British colony, so to speak, our brothers and sisters, they're going through a lot of persecution down there, right? A lot of forced ignorance down there. right? As many ones will testify for themselves, but still many ones and many of the Rastafari have a love and a zeal for His Majesty, and ones like Leonard Percival Howell is an example of that, right? Didn't even call him the first Rastafari, right? Or the first follower of Rastafari. They consider the first follower of Rastafari, because it's clear that he followed Rastafari, and it's also clear that he never called himself or us Rasta. That's something that's a derivative, right? Now, here we have a video. Is Leonard Howell the man who started the Rastafari movement? We'll say no, right? He is the man, right, who is one of the first followers of the RAS TAFARI. When we pause, that's for the space. RAS TAFARI, who started the Rastafari movement. He is one of the first ones in that sense, if you want to say it like that. Now, we don't know what that particular video went into in its detail, but ones can check it out for themselves and we can follow up. So this is a few of the screen shares and save that you'll find right now. Pinnacle, remember Pinnacle? You see Pinnacle right there where it says Pinnacle Way? I don't know why they have Lenin there. Is it because this woman might be a European or something like that? So she's influenced by Gandhiism and Leninism and communism and this ism and that schism that you want to now call it the Rastafarianism, right? Who are the bearded ones? Famous, well-known article right here, right? Long-whiskered Rastafarian. So this is kind of how it came into the print, right? How it came into the print, so forth and so on. The bearded ones. Now, note this right here, that Leonard Percival Howell didn't have a beard, right? Because many of the first ones were not locksmen and were not beardsmen, right? That was, you could say, the second level of it. But what's clear is the Ras Tafari, Kedamawi Haile Selassie, right? Both had, you know, the beard, right? And even his hair was rather, when I say long, not long in the dreadlock sense, so to speak, right? The lock sense, but woolly, fuzzy wuzzy. They called it fuzzy wuzzy back in the days, right? Woolly hair, right? Now, the real one that's ignored is this black American African, well, they say African American, but we'll say more better, black American Negro Judahite, Reverend James Morris Webb, right? And being a so-called black American, a Negro, a Judahite, I and I self, and a Rastafari, we hail him up. It's good to see and know that many other ones are picking up on. He's the one who said about looking to Ethiopia, looking to Africa, where a black man will be crowned king. In him, right, you will find the Redeemer. Now, that's not quite what Garvey said, but Garvey must have heard that, because this brother was saying it well before Garvey was saying what he was saying, right? So this is one of the unsung, right? One of the unsung ones. You can see by other publications he had out there, right? Where he's talking about King Solomon, a Negro by blood, a Judahite. Even many of the Israelites are kind of forced to agree with that. They might not agree with the King Tut thing, but they definitely would agree with the King Solomon, right? Because the Negro, right, equals the Judahite, especially over here in the captivities, right? The black Jews of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, right? So King Solomon instructed King Hiram. Also, he has the book, This Black Man Was the Father of Civilization. Very, very important book. Back then, the price of the said book was $1. Imagine that. The price of the said book was $1. Just a little bit more right here. This is what we sought to get to right here. Now, this document here, let's zoom in on this right here. This is from the official organ of the Ethiopian World Federation, Incorporated, the 1937 entity, not the 1996 or any other year like that. Because there's a lot of other ones out there that are perpetrating a fraud, saying that their federation, this and that, their local this and that, and they were incorporated, or some say reincorporated, back in the 90s sometime. We're talking about the original organization from 1937, right? So here, Saturday, December 31st, 1938, right? The Voice of Ethiopia, the News of the Ethiopian World Federation, Inc., Incorporated. Note this right here. Note from Jamaica, BWI, British West Indies, right, comes the following inspiring letter. You see who that is right there? Who is that? That's member. That's Ethiopian World Federation member. All right, Leonard Percival Howell of Jamaica, British West Indies. Let's see if we can read any of what he has right here. This is a part of it. Sir, permit me a little space through the columns of your valuable weekly paper. Coming across your paper, The Voice of Ethiopia, I found it quite interesting and well stored with reading matter. I can assure you that papers of this type will be patronized here. We find The Voice of Ethiopia the most satisfactory paper from every viewpoint. Hence, we look forward to its coming each week as it awakens race consciousness in the black man and contains very reliable foreign news. Now, that's just a part of what our fellow member, right? Now, remember, this is 1930. This is like 38. So Leonard Percival Howell, who is being called the first Rasta, right? Though he never used that word in his writing, he always referred to the full name of the Rastafari. And the first Rastafari was Haile Selassie the first. Haile Selassie the first Rastafari. I mean, that is just logic, factual, right, and exact. But still ones want to play games, right? Now, here you see what it says, the Rastafarites. That's interesting. We don't use that, but the Rastafarites retreat to mountain fastness of St. Catherine, right? Of St. Catherine. And then now here's a newspaper, the Daily Gleaner. Got to watch them, right? Fact and fiction, right? Trick knowledge. 700 men, women, and children form socialist colony. See, they like to call things in their terminology, even if we don't ascribe to such things. Right? Socialism means you're doing for the society. Capitalism means that you might make a profit. Both of these exist in Torah, but rightly regulated. Both of these. Right? Democracy, to an extent, also exists in Torah because people can make their own decisions. Right? You know, whether it leads to blessing, baraka, ukalala, or curse. Right? So this is the same brother right here. Right? And there's the Federation connection. I wanted to just make it known that there's the Ethiopian World Federation connection. And this is another newspaper right here. This is when the newspapers, like the Daily Gleaner. Notice how the Gleaner in 1937, right? The Daily Gleaner is now trying to say, oh, St. Thomas wars on Rastafari cult. They're trying to call Rastafari cult because they were under the British, right? They were under the British. Right? They were under the British, and we know what they did to King Charles. We know what they did with Cromwell. We know how they wiped out so much black archaeology, evidence, and fact up there in England and in Britain because blacks did rule over there, and they had the Hebrew-Israelite connection. Right? We even point to, was it George? Right? You know, oh no, Edward. You know, but right here. So they calling him cult. They're trying to name him cult. Right? This is where they character assassinate. That's how they character assassinate him. And I'm saying when they're calling him the first Rasta, though it might sound like a good thing, it is a covert character assassination. Instead of saying that he was one of the first founders, right, or first proclaimers, the more correct phraseology is first proclaimers of the Rastafari movement in Jamaica, because there's also the first church of Rastafari in Louisiana, New Orleans. Anybody who got more facts and information on that, please link us at LOJS.org, LOJS.org. Right? Link us more on that if you know about the first church of Rastafari in Louisiana, New Orleans, know what I mean? Right? That's some of my people on my paternal side, right? The link over there. But you see the Rastafari? Here's who's the first Rastafari. Now note this right here. Note this here, Ras Tafari, King of Kings of Ethiopia, a descendant of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, presented by Leonard Howell. Travel the world through. Travel the world through. Ras Tafari. I challenge you right now to find Rasta in the Promised Key by Gangangaru Marah. That was a pen name he chose, a.k.a. Leonard Percival Howell. So you see this well-known picture? Rastafari. He didn't say Rasta. See, that's abbreviating the name, abbreviating the glory. That means they're going to deviate from the teaching of His Majesty. This book here, Rastafari, the New Creation by Barbara Makeda Blake Hanna, right? Yes, sister, right here, here. Also having this well-known pic. You can see even right here where what they call the Magen David, the Star of David, right? Or the Hebrew, some say snowflake right there, right? You can see that right there on the crown, right? You can see that right there on the crown. And this is from an actual picture, right? Right? This is the actual picture here. Elsewhere you see it colorized and even has writing on it, trying to get to see the clear. So you see the Star of David there. You can even see a symbol that's a cross-like, the true cross-like symbol right there, which means an equal. It's like a plus sign. It's a plus, right? This is the Rastafari, a.k.a. Kedemawi Haile Selassie, right? Just to show a few more Kedemawi Haile Selassie. So the Rastafari, crowned upon the throne of great King David, right? David and Solomon, right? Crowned upon that throne, which is called the throne of Jehovah, Kedemawi Haile Selassie. He is the first Rastafari. Boom. Soul Jazz Records has it right. Rastafari, showing the Rastafari Kedemawi Haile Selassie and the Tege Men and Kedemawi to Aleta Georgis. Yes? Right? The Rastafari. Let's just go through some of this exhibits really quick right here. Now, from the Benjamite, Jamaican Rastafari and the Benjamites, right? The Rastafari of Benjamin of Jamaica, right? They will often put Marcus Messiah Garvey in a very prominent position. And he does have prominence as John the Baptist, but even John the Baptist lost his head, right? But of those born of woman, there's nobody greater than John the Baptist. That's what the Moshiach, the Messiah, Yeshua, HaNotri said. But he also said that he who is least in the kingdom is greater than he, right? He says, blessed is he who's not offended in me. Marcus Garvey got offended. James Morris Webb never did. So he's one of those in our, I won't say pantheon, but those who we refer to, right, as links, right? Being a Judahite or so-called Black American Rastafari, right? Linking for our roots of the first church of Rastafari in Louisiana, New Orleans. Right, but Haile Selassie, Bob Marley, enough love to that brother because he knew the message had to reach us here in this North Country, North America. You can see the different phases, right? The different phases. LOJS Tafari, right? Negus Tafari, and Negus Negest. Kedemawi Haile Selassie, right? Okay, here's a book that we compiled, right? We also want to do a revision of it since more information has come out on Malaku. Malaku in the Amharic means his angel. Malaku, right? And it's an Afro-Shemitic word also found in the Hebrew. His angel, right? His messenger, right? So it appears to be that much of what Leonard Percival Howell got rightly concerning His Majesty, the divinity of His Majesty, came from his angel, Dr. Malaku Emmanuel. Emmanuel means El, Hail, the power, the source is with Emmanuel, right? Bayan, the judicial decision of a judge, that judgment, right? So here from RastafariGroundation.org, also support Amharic for Rastafari. Amharic for Rastafari. We got native speakers, right? I might not be a native speaker, but we were speaking Afro-Semitic languages before we spoke English. So, you know, we have an inclination to that, but learning Amharic. Why learn Amharic? At one time, Rastaman used to say, Natty Dread, learn the Amharic. The Amharic, like Linville, like, is it Linville? Is that, what's the brother? Linville and Dillinger, right? Yeah, Linville Thompson and Dillinger, right? Natty Dread learned the Amharic because a lot of the resources from his angel, Dr. Malaku Manubayan, right? So he was an inspiration. If anyone was even a Rastafari before him, right? Notice Dr. Malaku doesn't have a beard, doesn't have, you could say, locks in that sense, or very woolly here. It's like close cropped and everything. Is similar to what we see in the picture of Leonard Percival Howell, because Leonard Percival Howell, right, was very much informed by Dr. Malaku Emmanuel Bayan, who was Kedemawi Haile Selassie, the Rastafari's special emissary to black, Negro, Judah, Yehuda, right, America, to black America, right? Nobody remembers Dr. Malaku. If somebody can get that through to Burning Spear for I and I, say that Ras Iodonis asked if Burning Spear can do a new tune to that classic rhythm. Nobody remembers Dr. Malaku. Nobody remembers Dr. Malaku Manuel Bayan. And he's the one who was Matsy sent. See, you got to check that out there. You really got to really understand what we're saying right here, that he was the one sent by Kedemawi Haile Selassie. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that others don't have their validity, but he is the one sent, right? He was the one sent by His Imperial Majesty to us over here in the West, right? Because you have to understand how there's this whole, how can we say, there's this whole British, like Anglo-American thing. You know, the British and the Americans, they fought each other. And so now they try to have us as Rastafari family also kind of fighting, right, each other. So sometimes we're engaging in some kind of like proxy wars, right, against each other. But they're not our wars, they're not our conflict. Oh, you are Yankee. Oh, you Yardie. All of that is a residual, right? All that is a residual based on the times of the Gentiles. That has nothing to do with us, how we stand in relation. Because many of us are married to each other, are basically family. I'm talking about like black Americans, right, so-called, and black Jamaicans and black Caribbean people. We're related with one family, but one is under the American white man, and the other's under the British white man, and they are playing their proxy wars, and we're going through all this nonsense, thinking one is worse, one is better, such and such, and we are one people, right? And the Rastafari is that unity, our divine heritage. All right, let's go through a couple more of these, because just quickly here, we'll follow up and get into some more detail. Very important book, J.A. Rogers' book, Real Facts About Ethiopia, right? And one reason why there's so much diverse doctrine is that many ones didn't really get that New Jerusalem schoolroom training properly. They may pick up something here, something there, from a song here or there, right? Or some of the artists like Bob Marley, Jacob Killer Miller, other ones, so many martyrs, Peter Tosh, you know, they, in their songs, you find a lot of biblical scriptural reference, Prince Farai and others, you know, and some of the other artists nowadays, Sizzler Kalonji, Miguel Collins, you know, Capleton, other ones also, you can tell they have a good rooting and grounding, right, in His Majesty's glory, in the Bible, and in Ethiopia, and the Israelites of Ethiopia history, right? So their songs, more than not, are empowered by a real message. While you have some other guy who grew their locks, and now they're more popular to girls because they got locks, and they're doing like, and none of them love tunes. Don't get me wrong, none of them have love tunes, but you know what I'm saying, the substantialness of it is lost. Right, but that we'll save that for a full, right? A full on why there's so much diverse doctrine, right? Why there's so much diverse doctrine, and nowadays, emphasis, nowadays Rastafari, right? Nowadays Rastafari. So this is also from the Voice of Ethiopia, right? Voice of Ethiopia got a little clearer. I thought we got a clearer picture of that, right? Voice of Ethiopia, the late Dr. Malaku Bayan. Right, also in the Voice of Ethiopia. Some say he worked himself to death, but may Jah bless, right? Emperor Selassie, the King of Kings, Kedemawi Haile Selassie, he links Negro with Africans throughout the world. You have to check that, because some ain't right Israelites get you, say, oh, the Ethiopians not Negro, so forth and so on. No, what's happening is they're following the Zondervan, this questionable concordance, which is another part of putting out this, it's COINTELPRO at the social media level. It's that COINTELPRO at social media level. Because we find right here where His Majesty is linking the Negro, right? The Negro, clearly the Negro with Africans or other black people, other Israelites in Africa, right? Not all Africans are Israelites, but we have many Africans who are Israelites. Dr. Malaku Manuel Bayan, This is him over here on the left-hand side, right there. Some of the meetings then. This is one of my brother duly elected treasurer for the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. Burhanu, Burhane, yes I. Yes, brother Moore right there. Caught him on a Moorish, interesting Moorish page. We'll share more on that. Just pointing to some of the works here. We're seeking to get to a particular, we're going to move through this at a lively pace. We can return to it. Ones and ones can take a screenshot or save, and if they want us to get into any one of these particular exhibits anymore right here. But there's something that we would like to just share just to conclude this right here. Right? That's also another important link right there from the same site right there. Ethiopian volunteers, right? Some of the Shashamene Land Grant Ethiopian World Federation elders right here, right? Right? From all over the diaspora, from the Caribbean and up here in the mainland, right? His Majesty there, His Majesty there, His Majesty there, His Majesty there, His Majesty there. Let's see, did we take the screenshot of it? All right, did we take a screenshot? Okay, boom. RAS TAFARI, Tamari. Well, Tamari is student. RAS TAFARI, right? Boom, this is why learn Amharic for Rastafari, right? His Majesty says, but as it is in the Amharic language alone that I'm able to speak my mind from my heart and with all the force of my spirit. If there's no other reason why we should learn Amharic, even just in the sense not to impress other people, but to study it, to really see the inner meaning of the words. Study it like, Torah observant, really glory of His Majesty observant students, right? That's one of the reasons right there. Also right here, Master Neger again, right? Asabain, Bemen Fesei, Hayel, Hulu, Kalibe, Lemenager, Yemia Chalain, Bamarinya Kwankwa Silahone. But as it is in the Amharic language alone that I am to speak my mind from my heart with all the force of my spirit. Now looking at the Amharic language, Afro-Semitic language link with the Hebrew is the key, right, for the Israelites of Ethiopia, right? The plain truth, Ras Tafari. What does Rastafari mean, right? What's the true meaning? It's the Lion of Judah Society and I fellow Chabarim that first have brought forward, right, in this so-called new millennium, the 2000s, the true meaning of Rastafari. And we're so happy that Wikipedia and others have picked up on this, right? Even before some of our brethren, right, who want to act like brethren, but not really brethren. There's a lot of things. You got to be born again. Ye must be born again. It has to be about that inborn conception, that new birth. So the first Rastafari is Kedamawi Haile Selassie. The first Rastafari be Kedamawi Haile Selassie. That's who the first Rastafari, right? That's who he be, right? He be who he be, right? His Majesty's Bible, more on that. Because every time we point to some hidden archive of fact, we go through a lot of war, as they blocked our Wednesday podcast for the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated Constitution Day, the 25th of August, right, 2021. And we're trying to actually put up some documents and exhibits, some audio there. That might take a little bit longer than we would have liked, but so be it. Multitasking here, right, stretch forth our hands to God. Yes, I, Rastafari. So, yeah, so I think we're almost near the fulfillment of this exhibit right here. Just taking it to the, right, I think there was a few more. Rastafari, right? Rastafari. I mean, even though he was Negus Tafari, he was still known, especially for us in the diaspora, as Negus Rastafari. That's how powerfully that name, right? That name stuck, right? That name stuck. Let's just do this here. All right. So right here, this is what came up when we put in the search Rastafari and Amharic. It says, in fact, the word Rastafari comes from two Amharic words. But they don't accredit. Notice they talk about accrediting who has come from. We've done numerous videos and writings about this, breaking down and explaining it, pointing to various resources where one can get it, but they don't give any credit. Maybe it's because, we're not from the Caribbean. Is that the case? And but how you know we're not from? Since our roots, the roots. But here they say Ras, literally head, but it also is a title of prince. Ethiopian title equivalent to prince or chief, and Tafari. Notice they don't explain what Tafari means. This is on the colonialatlas.wordpress.com, right? Jamaica in Amharic, right? Because there's still this divide and conquer that is going on, right? Even amongst I and I, this divide and conquer. And boom, this is the one that we wanted to share right here. This is from the Advocate. As you can see right here, the Advocate, right? And then down here it says facets of faith. We want to get this very clear, right? Notice what it says right here on the Advocate. It says facets of faith. Ras Tafari. You see how they separated it? Speaking of the man, Ras Tafari, I, Rastafari, like as one word, became emperor. We don't have that term in Amharic. We have Negusa Neges. Negusa Neges effectively mean king of kings. Became king of kings. You notice that even though in the Amharic language, the word emperor more correctly is king of kings, note how they always like to use the term emperor because it goes back to the Roman roots. So they are interpreting things from their roots, and therefore we need to properly get a good understanding of these things from our roots, right? But note what the article here says. The article very clearly here says Rastafari became emperor or king of kings of Ethiopia. Let's just do this right here. Let's take a screenshot of that so we can have that also as an exhibit, right? Now there was a couple other pics. Like one of these pics is not the same as the other, right? It's an interesting, there's two pics of His Majesty. One is king, one is as king, and one is as king of kings, right? One as king, one as king of kings. So anyway, brothers and sisters, we're going to seal up right here, right? That Haile Selassie first is the first Rastafari, or first Rastafari is Haile Selassie the first. We'll probably go with that word order right there, right? The first Rastafari is Haile Selassie the first, right? And this is proof to evidence. But enough respect, to our we can say patriarchs that have gone on before us, right? Those patriarchs that have gone on before us, right? Those ones who have gone on before us that have kept, that have kept the faith, right? That have kept the faith alive. You know what I mean? That have kept the faith alive and that bore faithful witness. But we do not agree with the assertion that Leonard Percival Howell was the first Rasta, because if you read any of his books, right? If you read any of his books, you will find that he never used this term. He never used this term, right? He never used this term Rasta. He never abbreviated the glory. And it's a good reason for him never abbreviating the glory, because he was, right, one of the first followers of the King of Kings, of Kedemawi Haile Selassie I. Yes, I. Check out the description, hit the links, share once, twice, 3 times for the Holy Trinity. Share with others right here. Share this video. Get this video out on your social media if you are able and willing to. Also, any contributions to share with the ministry, feel free. If not, still continue to tune in right here. Tell your friend, tell others as well. And also, any questions at LOJS.org, hit the contact there. Sometimes we'll check out some of the comments here, but oftentimes we'll check out more there, but post up here because, YouTube is YouTube. Yes, I. Rastafari. Give thanks, brothers and sisters. Jah bless the eye, keep the eye, cause his face is grace to shine on the eye. And I, in Yeshua, I, HaMoshiach, I, Adonai, Jah, Rastafari. Eyes is eyes is eyes is eyes. Yeshua I.